Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the ever merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, dear viewers. Welcome to tonight's lecture organized by the UK Talim Department. As per our tradition, we will start the program with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Can I request Sharfur Rahman Sahib to deliver the tilawat and its English translation, please?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qad aflahal mu'minun. الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون. I've just recited verses 1 to 5 of chapter 23, Surah Al-Mu'minun. The English translation of the verse is as follows. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. Surely, success does come to the believers who are humble in their prayers and who shun all that which is vain and who are active in paying zakat. Jazakumullah.
Jazakallah. Tonight, we have the pleasure and privilege of being joined by Ibrahim Bonsu Sahib. Bonsu Sahib is currently serving as the president of the Leicestershire chapter of the Ahmadiyya Jama'at UK. He is also currently serving as the secretary Khidmat-e-Khalaq, Service to Humanity, for PAMA, the Pan-African Ahmadiyya Muslim Association UK. It is also obvious that Bonsu Sahib is more than qualified to deliver today's lecture, as he works professionally as an independent nurse prescriber for substance misuse and currently works for Leicestershire and Rutland Community Drug and Alcohol Services. It gives me great pleasure to hand over to Ibrahim Bonsu Sahib to deliver tonight's lecture.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope my audio is clear. And Jazakallah to the Talim team for the wonderful job that they continue to do. And may Allah Almighty bless you all. And Jazakallah for the opportunity to deliver this presentation. I'm doing this presentation with the view that majority of the audience are Muslims. As a matter of fact, majority being of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. In drug and alcohol services for nearly 10 years now. And Jazakallah for the introduction there. And I can say the issue of drug and alcohol addiction or dependency is a never-ending story. And that continues to be the case. Although within Muslim circles, the issue of alcohol and intoxicants are normally discussed, my observation is that most often we do not cover much on the topic of drug addiction or dependency, largely because Islam frowns upon the use of illicit drugs, intoxicants, or alcohol. And we do not expect a Muslim to become a drug dependent. And so, unfortunately, if the problem happens, it becomes difficult for such a person to even talk about it, and therefore suffers in silence because of the stigma, until perhaps the issue starts to rot. But the reality is that we live in a society where we are often exposed to drugs and alcohol, being it at a college, university, or within the circles of work colleagues. And so we are not immune to it. And I would say there's no vaccination for this. And I guess the only immunity and vaccination are ourselves, our family support, the strength in our faith, and our attachment to Khilafat. Nonetheless, there's a need to create awareness. The need to create awareness so we can tread carefully to safeguard ourselves and families, and at the same time abiding by the precious advice of beloved Imam Hazrat Amir al-Mu'minin Hazrat Khalif Masih al-Khamis. May Allah Almighty grant him a helping hand. So the main objective of today's presentation, as I've mentioned, is to create awareness, especially as Muslims. The issue of dangers of drug and alcohol addiction is such a broad topic, and it's difficult to do justice to it within a short space of time. However, I will act within the allocated time to build a picture of the dangers of drug and alcohol addiction by touching on physics. Although the topic mentioned dangers of drug and alcohol addiction, we will start the basics by us having a look at drugs, the different kind of drug groups, and reasons why people use drugs. Addiction itself, the dangers associated with it, the Islamic viewpoint on addiction, and we take a look at the struggling Muslim, a Muslim who might be having an addiction issue. And we also have a look at seeking help, where we can get professional help. So slide number 2, please. So the question is, what are drugs? The simple definition in which it can give for drugs is drugs refer to substances that can change a person's physical or mental state when consumed. By consumption, I mean by eating, swallowing, inhaling, injecting, smoking, sometimes dissolving even under the tongue, and through different other means as well. Drugs can affect how one's brain works, how you feel, behave. It can affect your understanding and senses as well. Drug can be taken to cure illness. Example, when you've got headache and you take paracetamol for it. These are pharmaceutical drugs, paracetamol, ibuprofen. These are medication taken to cure, treat, or prevent disease. However, for the purposes of this presentation, the emphasis will be on psychoactive drugs. And the question is, what are psychoactive drugs? Or sometimes people call it, or it's referred to as recreational drugs. These are drugs which, when taken, affect the mood, perception, or one's consciousness. Now, psychoactive drugs are drugs which act on the central nervous system of the human body. As you know, the central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The central nervous system is responsible for receiving and coordination of information within the human body, or the human body system. And by so doing, it regulates your mood, your perception, and consciousness. So any drug which impacts on the central nervous system can also impact on your mood, perception, and consciousness. These are psychoactive drugs. And these are the drugs where dependency or addiction normally occurs. I did mention that sometimes, or these kind of drugs, psychoactive drugs, are also referred to as recreational drugs because people tend to use them because of the feel-good factor or pleasure that they derive from them. The term recreational is a bad term as it suggests these drugs can be fun and safe, but nothing could be further from the truth, as they can be very dangerous, as they can alter our perception of reality and diminish our ability to reason, both of which can put us into danger. Slide number 3, please. Now, in this slide, we'll be looking at groups of psychoactive drugs. There are different groups in these groups of drugs. We've got depressants, stimulants, hallucinogenics or hallucinogens, or the new type of drugs, not new at the moment, but it used to, which we call the new psychoactive substances. It used to be called the legal highs, but they've been outlawed, so now they call the illegal highs. Some drugs affect the body in many ways, and as a result of that, they can fall in more than one category. For instance, cannabis. Cannabis can appear in different groups, like it can be a depressant, and it's also a hallucinogenic drug. Now, the first group is depressants. Example is benzodiazepines, and also alcohol, which is legal, but not in Islam, and opioids. Now, the opioids are hard or strong painkillers. Sometimes you find the word opioids or opiates. The opiates are the naturally occurring strong painkillers, normally morphine-based, which is derived from the poppy or the opium plant, which is largely produced in Afghanistan. Now, the synthetic opiates are normally called the opioids. Some of them like buprenorphine, Subutex. But nowadays, the words are used interchangeably. So you can sometimes see opioids, you can sometimes see opiates. Still referring same category of drugs. And they come under depressants. Now, these depressants, what they do is they slow down the messages between the brain and the body and affects concentration, coordination, and ability to react quickly to things around us. And these drugs can make you chill out, relax, mellow, but only in the short term. These are short-term gains, but can also produce negative, dangerous effects in the long term, such as chronic depression. It has also got what we call paradoxical or a rebound effect. For instance, someone may be taking, say, diazepam for anxiety, but in the long run, it can have a rebound or a reflect effect on the person. And the same drug will eventually cause anxiety, and the person will become anxious more in the long run, or maybe become aggressive as well. So the first group is the depressants. Now we take a look at the stimulants. Example, as you know, very common, cocaine or caffeine. I mean, a lot of people take coffee. You've got caffeine in them as well. Now the stimulants, other example of stimulants are, maybe you've heard about amphetamines or speed. Nicotine, as we also find in tobacco, is also a stimulant. Ecstasy, which sometimes we call MDMA. Sometimes the stimulants are also referred to as the uppers. It's a slang because when you take it, you become high and it keeps you up. So sometimes it's also referred to as uppers. And the depressant, because it keeps you down, sometimes the slang is the downers. It keeps you down because they get you down. Now, the stimulants, what they do is they speed up the messages between your brain and the body, making you feel more awake, more alert, confident, energetic, and you can be talkative or very active. I'm not saying if you are talkative or very active, it means you've been on one of these, but these are some of the qualities that you can get from these stimulants. They can cause your heart to beat faster, your blood pressure can go up, your body temperature can go up, and sometimes can lead to heat stroke, and can also give you reduced appetite. It can cause agitation, sleeplessness as well. And large doses of stimulants can cause anxiety, can cause seizures, stomach cramps, paranoia. And some of these in large doses, like amphetamines and cocaine, can cause psychosis as well, which is characterized by delusions and hallucinations, or people will be hearing voices. Now, the next group is the hallucinogens. Example is cannabis, ketamine, or magic mushrooms. Now, these drugs change your sense of reality. Your senses are distorted, and the way you see, hear, taste, smell, or feel things becomes different. For example, you may see or hear things that are not really there, or you may have unusual thoughts or feelings. Small doses of these hallucinogens can cause confusion, disorientation, or dizziness. And larger doses may cause hallucinations, memory loss, distress, anxiety, increased heart rate, paranoia, panic, and aggression. Now, the last group I've put there is the new psychoactive substances. Like I said, it used to be called the legal highs, but these are not legal anymore. And these are substances which are normally created in the laboratories to mimic the effect of the existing drugs in the categories I've explained above, to get around the law. And just like I mentioned, it was outlawed with the introduction of the new Psychoactive Substances Act of 2016, so which makes it illegal to manufacture or supply. And these illegal highs can have serious health risk, as in most cases, the chemicals used are never meant for human consumption, and users can never be certain of what they are taking. Example is mamba or spice. This is synthetic cannabis or synthetic cannabinoid. There's a whole world of them, uncountable. Next slide, please. Slide number 4. Now, these new or these psychoactive or recreational drugs can also be grouped under 3 categories. It can be legal, example, as we know, nicotine or alcohol. These are legal by law, not, alcohol, not in Islam. By law, they are legal. And some of them are illegal. This means it's against the law to have them or supply them to other people. Most psychoactive drugs are illegal. And we have the other class of psychoactive drugs which are controlled. Most of these drugs are used in medicine and are prescribed with medical supervision. Example, the benzodiazepines, which you can get diazepam, lorazepam, or the opioids, like I did mention, strong painkillers, such as buprenorphine, morphine sulfate. Now, these controlled drugs, because of the potential of them being abused, like I said, they are controlled and comes under Drug Misuse Act of 1971, which regulates their manufacture, supply, and possession. They are further classified under Class A, B, or C, depending on the presumed risk of harm that they may cause. Next slide, please. Slide number 5. Now, in this slide, we'll be looking at what are some of the reasons which make people to use recreational drugs or psychoactive drugs. The first one, helping to cope with situations. I mean, during the economic hardships, a few years back, and, stressful situations, the global economic crisis, and even with this COVID-19 pandemic, when people have lost their jobs, rampant domestic abuse, family breakdown, loss of spirituality, and lack of bond with Allah, the Almighty, then people find different means of coping, and they can result in taking some of these hard drugs to try and cope according to their own perception or how they feel they can cope. In my usual place of work or in my line of work, sometimes you happen to see a client and you inquire from the client, what happened, what made you, to start using strong, illegal drugs or some of these strong painkillers. And the person will say, I lost my job and I was going through a lot of emotional pain and a friend introduced me to. So you can see, whenever there is economic downturn, whenever people experience difficulties and they have nowhere to turn to, you see, the more people move away from the creator, the more they try to find other means to cope. So this is one of the routes in which some people tend to use these hard drugs. Then there is peer pressure as well. Moving with the wrong crowd, especially at college, university, because sometimes people want to fit in. Maybe in the first place, even if you're a Muslim, you've not shown or identify yourself as a Muslim, and trying to blend in without not being mindful of the ultimate consequences. You see some friends using it, and perhaps you also want to try it, for them to, recognize that you are also part of them, and you are also hard, you can move with them. So there is this peer pressure, which can also, get people to use these hard drugs. And some people take it because they enjoy the effects on the body. Some of the drugs affect you in different ways. It makes you energetic, excited, relaxed, and calm. And that's what some people want to feel. And that's why they take some of these hard drugs. And so other means is also curiosity. Some people want to know what will happen if they take it. And unfortunately, because of the addictive nature of such drugs, they take it day 1, day 2, they continue to use it. And before you know, they are hooked on these drugs. The other means is also dependency. Long-term use meant they've built dependency on the drug. They become addicted to the drug. And they need to continue to use them to prevent physical withdrawals. Because a lot of the drugs, if you don't use them, you start to experience physical withdrawals, like agitation, sweating, restlessness. You see, you have pumping, palpitation, a lot of them. So because of that, they have to feed the habit. Also, sometimes it's not that the client started using dangerous drugs such as heroin, but it could be that they were prescribed strong painkillers after hospital operation or car accident, and they have found it difficult to wean off these strong painkillers. Example, morphine sulfate OxyContin, oxycodone. All of these are morphine-based, and as a result have continued to buy them off the street to feed the habit when the doctor's prescription ended. Normally, for some of these opioids or strong painkillers, for example, the doctors will do a reduction plan with patients before they come off. However, some patients without knowledge or without the knowledge of their doctors will, in addition, buy the drugs off the street to top up if they find it difficult to cope with the reduction plan that the doctors or the doctor is going through with them. So you can see people use drugs for different reasons, and these are some of the commonly routes that people tend to, pass before they start being, hooked onto these hard drugs. Slide number 6, please. One second. One thing we have to understand is that addiction is a disease. And the way we treat other diseases, that's the same way we have to go by to tackle the addiction. And just like I said, it's a disease which needs to be treated. Many people don't understand why or how other people become addicted to drugs. They may mistakenly think that those who use drugs lack moral principles or willpower, and that they could stop the drug use simply by choosing to. In reality, drug addiction is a complex disease, and quitting usually takes more than good intentions or strong will. Drugs change the brain, the ways that the brain works, and it makes quitting very hard for some people, even for those who want to. Addiction or drug dependency, as I've said, is a chronic disease which is characterized by drug seeking and the use of drugs that is often compulsive or difficult to control. And despite harmful consequences that some of them may be experiencing, they still go on to use it on and on, day in and day out. The initial decision to take drugs is sometimes voluntary for some people, but repeated drug use can lead to brain changes that challenge an addictive person's self-control and interfere with their ability to resist intense urges to take the drugs. It may begin by taking prescription pain medication, just like I've mentioned, after, say, car accidents. But before long, the user may spend time thinking about how to get the drugs, when to take them, and how to pay for them. Just to talk about how a bit of understanding what happens in the brain, when someone becomes addicted to drugs. Most drugs affect the brain's reward circuit or system, causing euphoria, as well as flooding the brain with chemical messenger called dopamine. And the increase of dopamine in the reward circuit causes the reinforcement of pleasurable but unhealthy behavior of taking drugs. That leads to people to repeat the behavior over and over and again. And as the person continues to use the drugs, the brain adapts by reducing the ability of cells to respond to it. This then reduces the high that person feels compared to the high they felt when they first took the drug. This effect is what we call building tolerance. That means the person has built tolerance to the drug. The result is that the person then continues to use more and more of the drug, chasing the high or euphoria, and it becomes a never-ending story. Now, according to, I've already mentioned, that addiction is a disease, and this is what is supported, is authenticated by the International Classification of Diseases, which is sanctioned by the World Health Organization. The current review is the review 11. So we've got the ICD 11. And it gives criteria diagnosis of drug dependency or drug addiction. And it talks about criteria, impaired control, increasing priority, physiological features. I'll just go briefly into it. Now, impaired control, I've already mentioned some of these. It means that there's a lack of control in the use of the drug or difficulty to limit the use of the drugs, despite the desire to do so. And there is craving or strong desire to use a substance. Then we've got increasing priority. That means the use of the substance has taken a center stage. That is, it has increasing precedence over other aspects of the life responsibilities of the person. Then we've got the physiological features. That is, what we call neuroadaptation to the substance. That's one of them. That means the body compensates for the presence of these substances in order to function normally. And there's repeated use despite sometimes the occurrence of physical or mental harm. And when you've got these three criteria that I've mentioned, any two of them, when you meet any two of them or any two of these criteria are met, then it means diagnosis of dependency can be made. And this is according to the World Health International Classification of Diseases, Section 11, ICD 11. Slide 7. Okay, thank you, Jazakallah. Now, just some vital information about the effect of drug addiction. And some of this is gathered from the National Statistics, the government statistics website. And these are some of the dangers of drug addiction or drug dependency. UK, as you see, has among the highest rates of drug addiction cases in the Western world. And there is estimated, around, over 300,000 problematic heroin or cocaine users. And when you talk about drug addiction, people who are drug dependent, their mortality rate, is between 6 to 16 times higher than that of the general population. And also in the UK, there's an estimated, number of over 180,000 people who have chronic hepatitis C. And within this number, over 90% of these infections are clients who are, have got drug dependency or drug addiction. And as you know, hepatitis C is a virus infection of the liver. And a lot of these drug users do inject the drugs. And that's where transmission occurs through contamination and sharing of needles. Other infections such as hepatitis B or HIV can also spread through the same medium, like sharing of contaminated needles. Slide number 8, please. Now, let's continue to go through the dangers of drug dependency. Now, mental health. I've already mentioned some of them when I was going through the drug groups. Drug use increases the risk of mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, psychosis. And people with mental health issues also have a higher rate of drug use problems. And you've got crime, either by possession or supply of these drugs can land you with a criminal record or end up in jail. Even more disturbing is the number of prisoners who had ever used drugs. In the UK alone, more than 35% of the prison population have got drug addiction problem. And the issue is, once you get a criminal record or gets you into jail, then it also becomes very difficult for you to get back on your feet. I'm not saying there is no chance, but it will be difficult to turn things around. Some of the dangers of drug dependency or addiction is that it jeopardizes, it puts your relationship with your family and friends in danger. It could be because of the stigma you no longer feel as part of the family, or when you start to drain the family of their resources, hustling them with money, trying to feed it, diverting the men for upkeep of the children to feed the habit. By this, the addiction separates the user from their loved ones, as the relationship with the drugs takes over everything else. Normally, people who start drug addiction become secretive, and defensive in early stages of substance use. And as the habit progresses, they may abandon their spouses, children, intimate relationships so that they can pursue their drug use without any interference. Also, it's education and employment. It can affect your education and employment. You start to neglect work and school responsibilities because the drug use has now become the captain of your ship. Drug users are exposed by their employers who catch them making dangerous mistakes or using drugs at work. Once you've destroyed a professional relationship, it becomes difficult to get re-established in your field. Other aspect is the effect on pregnancy. Drug addiction poses serious danger to unborn baby. There could be miscarriage, birth defects, brain damage, premature delivery, low birth rate, and babies born with withdrawal symptoms for mothers who have been used to strong illicit or strong painkillers. The other aspect, the dangers, in which I've already mentioned some when I was going through the groups, is about the side effects of the drugs. Example, with opioids and cocaine. Some of the side effects, such as poor dental hygiene, you can have heart diseases, respiratory problems, like COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, bronchitis. These drugs can worsen your asthma. You can develop what we call cracked lung, that is chronic problems associated with prolonged inflamed lungs. You can have stress, high blood pressure, and can cause infertility as well. And some people may be tired of what is happening to them, yet they feel powerless to stop the damage, even if they know that the help is available. The dependency or the addiction may leave people in paralyzed. And when it comes to making that even the first important phone call to seek support, it becomes difficult for them. Next slide, please. That's slide number 9. Now, we'll now take a look at the Islamic viewpoint on harmful drugs and intoxicants. Obviously, as you know, these harmful drugs and intoxicants are forbidden in Islam. I'm not talking about maybe the caffeine, I'm not talking about that, but majority of these are forbidden in Islam. And as you can see in Holy Quran chapter 2 verse 220, Allah Almighty has mentioned it over there, that they asked thee concerning wine and the game of hazard. Say, in both there is a great sin and also some advantages for men, but their sin is greater than their advantage. So that phrase there, their sin is greater than their advantage. And the verse continues, and they ask thee what they should spend. Say what you can spare. Thus Allah makes his commandments clear to you, that you may reflect. So as you can see, even things which are lawful in Islam, Islam instructs us to be moderate in the use of them. Now this verse clearly shows that even if something has some benefit, but causes more harm to our physical or spiritual health, then it becomes unlawful, and therefore we should stay away from it. And this is further supported in Hadith, Sunnah Ibn Majah. The Holy Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that whatever causes intoxication in large amount, a small amount of it is also unlawful. And the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned in Noah's Ark Kashtino, the Prophet ﷺ states, and I quote, avoid all of these. You say, avoid all immoderation and abstain from every type of intoxicant. It is not alcohol alone that ruins a person. Opium, ganja, charis, bang, Thai, all other addictions are similarly destructive. They ruin the mind and destroy lives. So shun all such substances. I cannot understand why one would choose to indulge in these intoxicants when year on year they claim the lives of thousands of addicts, not to mention the torment of the hereafter. So it is quite clear the Islamic viewpoint on these hard drugs. Next slide, please. Slide number 10. As I've already mentioned, in Islam, there could be a silent struggle due to the stigma and the religious perspective on the issue of drugs or intoxicants. Although drug addiction is stigmatized in many communities, in a traditional Muslim family, it is especially frowned upon and viewed as sinful and taboo. The unfortunate situation is that in some instances, you could be shunned or labeled as damaged and lacking marriage potential. And as a young man or youth growing, this can affect you greatly. So there's this issue of silent struggle and people coming out or people discussing about it when there's an issue or when they are facing difficulty. But it is very important that we always, as our beloved Imam Hazrat Amir al-Mu'minin has mentioned, we should always, as every Muslim, you should be a mirror to your fellow Muslim, as the Hadith says. So we shouldn't show hatred, but if people are having difficulties, then we should show true brotherhood, and approach them in an amicable manner, in a nice and decent way, and offer support if they approach you. Now, one of the sad things, which is, in some of the Muslim communities or some Muslim groups, is that they believe drug addiction is caused by jinn or evil spirits. And that they believe that when you've got drug dependency or addiction, it means the body has been taken over by jinn or evil spirit. And that is why the person is experiencing what they are experiencing. This is a sad situation. I don't know if the jinn instructed the person to start using cannabis or heroin, or where the jinn was standing when the person started using the drug. Anyway, when jinn comes into the equation, then that becomes a topic for the Murabi. So we'll leave that to Murabis to deal with that another day. But anyway, alhamdulillah, this is not the belief of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And we are guided by Khilafat and the advice of our beloved Imam Hazrat Amir al-Mu'minin. May Allah Almighty grant him a helping hand. These Muslim clerics who practice exorcism, or what they call ruqya, as they call it, they need to understand that drug addiction is an illness which needs to be practically treated just like any other illness. Also, they need to understand that prayer alone cannot solve this problem, and necessary effort should be taken to seek professional help. Slide number 11, please. Now, as a way of seeking help, with my target audience today being Muslims, majority being members of our Jama'at, it is very important that we ponder over this verse of the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, which says, "O ye who believe, seek help with patience and prayer. Surely Allah is with the steadfast." Our beloved Imam, through several sermons, has drawn the attention of believers to practically seek help through patience, perseverance, and prayer. And this should be our guiding principle in dealing with the issue of drug addiction. The verse begins by saying, "Oh, you who believe, seek help. Seek help." So that means you seek help from Allah and at the same time seek professional help. So you should make that practical effort. And it is also very important that the person in difficulty will also need all the necessary support of the family and colleagues as much as possible to help them to get back on their feet. Never let go of prayer, and any member of the community is encouraged to write letters to our beloved Huzur for support in prayer as well, if they are facing such difficulty. It might not be a member or a Muslim member of a community. It could be your friend at the workplace. It could be your colleague. So when you've got the information, you can always advise them to always seek practical help. Next slide, please. Number 12. So as I've mentioned before, addiction is treatable and can be successfully managed. One thing we should know that there could be the risk of relapse. And research has shown that combining addiction treatment, the treatment medicines with behavioral or talking therapies, such as counseling, psychosocial interventions, like participating in courses such as drug awareness, harm reduction, etc., ensures the best chance of success. I'll mention that, and this is also which is recommended by the NHS. Your GP is a good start. Your doctor, when you have difficulty, you can discuss your problem with your doctor, and the doctor can support you to get you into treatment. They may offer you treatment at the practice or refer you to your local drug service. If you are not comfortable talking to your GP, you can approach your local drug treatment service yourself. Now, we've also got this website, Talk to Frank. It's a national anti-drug advisory service established by the Department of Health and Home Office to provide information about drugs, confidential advice, and also to signpost people to the nearest drug and alcohol treatment services. In Leicestershire and Rutland, where I'm based, the community treatment services provider is Turning Point, and that's my employer. You can also visit the AdFam website. It's a national charity which supports families and people with drug and alcohol issues. It gives you a list of charities and private drug treatment services available in the UK. And one thing, just to make you aware, that private drug treatment can be expensive, but sometimes people get referrals through the NHS. Jazakallah for listening to this presentation, and I hope I've given some information and created some awareness that audience will find it beneficial. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Ibrahim Sahib, for such a factual and scholastic lecture. It was certainly an educational as well as a faith-inspiring experience for me, as I'm sure it was for all of our listeners. You not only outlined the very clear dangers of the recreational use of drugs and alcohol, but also the very clear and meaningful reasons behind why Islam has forbidden their use in this way. Once again, Jazakallah for your time and for gracing us with such a knowledgeable lecture.
Exactly.
There were a few questions that have come through that I'd just like to read out to you. The first one here is are the legal drugs which are prescribed medically permitted to be taken according to Islam?
Jazakallah for the question. And as you know, Islam is pro-life, and anything which is prescribed, by the doctor as a medication for you to cure illness, to improve any physical health issue or disease or mental health disease, then in that aspect, then that is condoned by, as acceptable in Islam. For instance, alcohol is forbidden, but there are so many medications like cough syrups, which contains a bit of alcohol. But because Islam is pro-life, an idea is to save life, then if it's prescribed by a professionally qualified doctor, then it is within your rights and within Islam for you to use that medication. And by that means, you have to follow the instructions given by the doctor. The moment the medication is stopped or the doctor stops it, then you also need to stop it. You need to stop it and follow the advice of the doctor. But when you carry on to buy it off from the street, then in that sense, you are entering into what we call self-medication. In that sense, this is not allowed because it's not under the supervision of a medical qualified doctor. I hope I've answered that question.
Jazakallah, yeah. You mentioned alcohol there, and there's another question that's come in. What advice can you give to anyone who is dealing with peer pressure at work or at school, college, or university with regards to drinking alcohol?
It is very important. I mean, a lot of places like colleges, universities, or workplaces have also got, occupational health or, units where they can offer counseling or to support colleagues who are, having difficulty or stressful situations. In most cases, especially at the workplace, it could be due to perhaps maybe stress, or perhaps it could be due to the fact that, at the college or university, you are in the wrong crowd as well. But, the first point of treatment is to acknowledge that you've got problem. Now, if a person is drinking alcohol or doing hard drugs and you don't acknowledge they've got a problem, then they've not entered into treatment. So if they acknowledge that there is a problem, or if someone draws their attention because it is having impact on their studies or it is having impact on their work, then, and they take heed, then the first point of contact, if there's a support service within the university, college, or at the workplace, most often they are confidential, then they should make use of it. But if it is difficult, then they can contact their GP as well. But like I said, all efforts also needs to be supported with prayers as well, because it is Allah Almighty who comes between a man and his heart. And it is Allah Almighty who created us, and he can always support us. Let me just give you, if I've got time, just a bit of a scenario. When you are, for instance, visiting a friend, and this friend has, for instance, got a wild dog in the house, and you reach the gate of the house, you see this wild dog there, but you can also see your friend in the house. And when it becomes difficult for you to enter the house, because as soon as you step into the compound, the wild dog will pounce on you. What do you need to do? You have to shout to your friend. You have to shout to your friend for your friend to come and remove the wild dog from the compound so that you can enter. So that is the role between, and that's the position between us and Allah Almighty. When you are making the effort and there's difficulty in between, you need to pray to Allah Almighty to pave the way for you. But that also means following the practical steps to get support. Yeah.
Jazakallah. there was a question. We've only got a few minutes left, but very quickly, there was a question that's come through from Shahida Boaki Sahiba. What more can be done for an addict who refuses to go for rehabilitation and shuns professional help or advice?
I think all efforts have to be done. The failure is when the family members lose hope and don't provide the support or the love. And just like Allah Almighty has said in the Holy Quran, you should show love even to a person who has got hatred towards you. And the more you continue to show that love, eventually that person will tend to acknowledge it. So I think all efforts should be made. Sometimes the person who is approaching the person with the drug dependency is not the right person to approach. Sometimes the person has got colleagues or friends in whom he or she is, more acquainted or free with. So you have to use all angles to get to the person to address the issue. The failure is when you don't make the effort to approach it. But the most important thing is to pray for that person. You see, you have to pray for that person because, when you continue to pray, maybe something write, if you're a member of the Ahmadi community, write a letter to Huzu. The efforts you continue to do will make just click the heart of the person, and they will begin to acknowledge and embrace the support that you want to give them. So, like I said, the most important thing is to pray and do not lose hope and continue to use all channels or avenue to get to the person. I hope I've answered the question.
Jazakallah. Yes, Jazakallah once again, Ibrahim Sahib. I would just now like to pass on to Waqar Ahmadi Sahib, who will conduct the final segment of the program.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Ibrahim Sahib, Jazakumullah for a very insightful lecture this evening, giving us some really useful information and insights, and also giving very practical solutions to obviously what is a huge problem today, and also provided some very useful solutions from an Islamic perspective, more importantly. So Jazakumullah for giving us your time this evening. It really is appreciated. Just to give our viewers a heads up about our lectures coming up next week. So the next Urdu lecture, which will be on Monday, the 5th of July, at 7:30 p.m. will be by Murabi al-Silsila Adil Shah Sahib on the topic of Islam's rejection of slavery. And then our next English lecture, which will be a week today, sorry about the date, that should be Tuesday the 6th of July, will be by Muhammad Ahsan Ahmadi Sahib on the topic of Islam, a message of peace. So if you could please join us for both those lectures at the normal time of 7:30 p.m. next week. If you can please request Ibrahim Sahib to lead us in silent prayer.
Exactly. Please join me in silent prayer. Bismillah. Allahumma amin. Jazakallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.